You have to understand something. We are programmed to avoid discomfort. It's how we're biologically developed on an emotional level. Avoid pain, seek pleasure. It's the basic premise of how we're engineered for survival. So with that being said, if you want to coast through life, your body can handle that. But if you want to win, if you want more out of yourself, if you want to create a life for yourself that you've always dreamed of, then there's a step that you have to take on a conscious level to shut that instinct down, to break through. When you're in the gym, there is a threshold that you must cross in order to grow muscles, in order to induce adaptation on a cellular level. It's a stimulus that must be reached, and everything prior to that single threshold, that single rep, is a warm-up. So there is literally that one rep that is transcendent in nature, but it must receive significant trauma to activate satellite cells to proliferate to the injury site and fuse to the muscle fibers to form myofibrils, which will increase in thickness and number. That makes you into a brand new person on a cellular level. Your cellular structure is no longer the same after that one moment. And in your life, there will be moments when it seems like your world is completely crashing down. But if you survive it, you will grow into an entirely new person. You see, you get that promotion when you put a proposal on your boss's desk that's kind of bold but makes a statement. Your business will grow when you present it with a challenge that you weren't accustomed to. When you hire a new employee and you take that risk. When you come out with a new product that's kind of, I don't know if this will work. Breaking these pain barriers, like taxing the muscle in the gym with something it's never experienced before, is what makes it respond with growth. And it's the exact same thing in life. Your brain will grow when you've given it challenging exercises. If you do a Mensa test over and over again, you will become a stronger version of yourself. Take a look at Hurricane Katrina, a horrific disaster, so many lives lost. But you know what happens after a disaster? In a way, order gets restored. Sometimes the system has to break for attention to be brought in the right way. It's in the moments of failure that we grow and forge a new life for ourselves. Education Secretary Duncan, he said Katrina was the best thing that happened to the education system in New Orleans. And he said that it took this devastating tragedy for the community to wake up and demand more and expect more for their children. President of Tulane University, Scott Cowan, he stressed the same point in his book, that it paved the way for a transformation of a city that needed it. And this isn't to discredit how horrific that tragedy was, but these moments of failure produce a change, a necessary change. Take a look at Ryan Blair. His defining moment was when his company was 1 month away from bankruptcy. Ryan decided to invest all of his savings, all of his personal savings, to give Visalis 1 more month of operating capital to test an idea that he had in his mind that he believed would save the company, the Body by V 90-day challenge. And guess what? It worked. He was named by Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. He turned the company around from the edge of failure, which was something like $6 million in debt, literally 1 month away from declaring bankruptcy, to grossing more than $150 million a year in revenue in just 16 months. Now, at one point, they were making over $30 million a month off this idea. When your back is against the wall, that's when you have the sense of urgency. That's when you are most desperate. That's when life changes for you in an instant. That's when you are most creative. That's when you will not take no for an answer. And then from there, you learn how to be that way for the rest of your life. Dwayne Johnson had $7 in his pocket after he was cut from a Canadian football team. He wanted to make it work in the NFL. But getting cut from that football team was the best thing that ever happened to him. And it was a trigger inside him that something needed to change. So then he went home and he knew that he had to start all over again. And it was this blessing in disguise because he asked his dad to teach him everything he knew about wrestling. His father was like a legendary wrestler. And so his dad wouldn't agree at first, but Dwayne was just so persistent and he kept convincing him over and over again to finally just give him the chance. So finally got him to agree. And after months of working with him and getting beat on the mat and whatnot and going through harsh training, Dwayne finally was able to work at some local barns for only like $35 a night. And then he finally got picked up by some circuits, and eventually he was able to work his way into the WWF, which it was called at the time, now WWE. And he went under the name of Flex Kavana. Probably didn't know him at the time. And then after a couple of years, he continued to just work on this, hone in on his skills, become more likable, and then he coined himself as The Rock. Now, he's Hollywood's highest grossing actor. That breaking point is where you find a way. That's what unleashes a cellular change within you. That's where you become a transformed version of yourself. But it's that breaking point that creates the substantial growth, where you go, I can't freaking take this anymore. But you find a way in those moments. So Blair said this, quote, in his book. He said, if you look at the Great Depression, you can look at it from one of two perspectives. You could say, oh my God, it was awful. Look at all the poor people that got hurt. Look how many rich men jumped off of buildings and so forth. This was devastating. People lived in absolute poverty. But the perspective that I choose to see is the one where how many rich men were made during that era? How many family legacies were created during the Great Depression and after it? And he's spot on. Lots of businesses thrived as a result of the Great Depression. In a recession, the greatest resource there is cheap labor. People starving for work. So it's actually the best time for entrepreneurial action. See, life is very little about what actually happens to you. Pretty much all of life is just how you perceive it and how you react to the circumstances and situations that you're presented. There will be moments in your life when your back is against the wall, but how will you perceive it? You can see it as everything culminating into this giant travesty, or it could just be the defining moment of your life to make the change that's necessary. Just like when you're in the gym, on a heavy set of squats, for instance, your world is closing up until those last few reps. And then it becomes so painful to go on until you muster up the willpower in your mind to shut that instinct down. Until you get to this last rep, this one last rep, where you really don't know if you could go on anymore. And you go down, not really sure if you could come back up again, because that last rep you were struggling, but you know what, you do it. And there's something inside of you that unleashes when you're at the bottom, that pushes you through to get it up because there's no other way. You're not falling down with this weight. And it is a complete dogfight. You shake, but you break through. And then every time you step under that weight again, you can beat that rep range because you already forged the path. You laid the blueprint in your mind. You instantly become a stronger person of yourself in that rep, physically, mentally, spiritually. Embrace the moment when your back is against the wall. Those will be the defining moments in your life.